All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Meta Polywall with the Orange County Water District, and I'm excited to welcome you to our webinar today. As many of you know, Southern California is not new to unusual weather patterns, and this past year did not disappoint. Between getting an abundance of rainfall last winter and a surprising tropical storm this past August, we will learn just how much rain we received and how much we were able to capture and recharge into the Orange County groundwater basin. So before we begin, I do want to mention that we are in webinar mode, so attendees are muted to reduce any background noise. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on OCWD's website and YouTube channel. Lastly, we'll take questions at the end of the presentation, so we do encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our absolute best to get to as many questions that we can today and address questions most relevant to the information presented today. In the event we're not able to get to your questions during the webinar, we are happy to follow up with you after. So please do submit your questions as they come up. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. And we have Ben Smith. He's the Director of Recharge and Wetland Operations for the Orange County Water District. He is responsible for the management and oversight of the operations and staff of the district's field headquarters and Prado areas, which includes the recharge facilities and the Prado constructed wetlands. Ben is charged with optimizing system percolation, facility use planning, stormwater capture and routing, imported and recycled water recharge, facility maintenance, and other related activities. Ben is a California and Arizona certified professional civil engineer, California water treatment and distribution operator, and a qualified stormwater pollution prevention plan engineer or designer. Ben is joined by John Sweeten. John Sweeten works in the Reservoir Regulation section as a shift leader for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. John has 20 years of experience working for the Corps of Engineers, also working as the Los Angeles River Study Manager in the planning section. Prior to coming to the Corps, he also worked at the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California in the Water Resources Department. And John has a Master of Science degree in Civil Engineering, Water Resources from the University of Colorado Boulder, and is a registered professional engineer in California. So with that, we'll get started with Ben. Ben, I know you're sharing your slides, so we're ready when you are.
Thank you. Let me get this rolling. Looking okay, Meta?
Yep.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for spending your lunchtime with us. I am grateful to take this opportunity with John to share our stormwater program here and some things we learned over the last year. So just very briefly, Orange County Water District, we cover the north and central portion of Orange County here in the blue line in the map. This is water that's, or an area that's hydraulically connected to the groundwater. The Santa Ana River runs through the middle of this. Up on the top right, this blue body, that is the Prado Dam we'll be talking a lot about today. Orange County Water District is a wholesaler. We're in charge of the groundwater. And these different colors on the map are the major producers, the retail agencies that are pumping water out of the ground and serving it to the homes and the businesses. So who's doing the work at OCWD? There's about 20 staff members who work in the surface recharge area. A lot of heavy equipment operators, maintenance folks, some folks managing where the water goes. And of course, we own a lot of property. We have to maintain landscape, and there's some administration. We have a decent sized fleet of heavy equipment, things like bulldozers, scrapers, excavators, backhoes, water truck, dump trucks, and on-road vehicles as well. So very big picture here. In our service area, you can see at the top left, 400,000 acre feet a year, roughly, is the total water demand in the service area. 17% of that is being met by imported water through Metropolitan Water District. The other 83%, all the way here on the bottom of the page, is coming out of the groundwater. So this dark blue, old school well pump is signifying taking water out of the ground and serving it to the residents and the businesses here. The other images here are signifying water we're putting into the ground to make sure that our resource is sustainable in the long run. So what we're here mostly to talk about today is the river flow, the base flow and stormwater. That's here on the right. We'll touch more on that later. We also have a large project, the groundwater replenishment system. So that is a partner project with Orange County Sanitation District, where we're purifying wastewater up to drinking water standards. Nature does a good chunk of recharging the ground for us. And sometimes we'll buy untreated import water and recharge it into the ground as well. So a little more detail on all those sources, how they match together. So I'll start here with the 14%, the natural incidental recharge. So when it rains here, most of this occurs at the foothills of the mountains, the hills. The water just naturally falls down into the aquifer. This also happens limited on a limited amount at the the field at the high school or the open space park. So that is the nature portion. The whole rest of this pie is what we're managing, actively managing as humans. So the Santa Ana River base flow, this 23%, that's what comes down the river year round. In our climate, the way our area has developed, basically what that is treated wastewater flow from the Inland Empire. But that comes down the river year round. Storm flow, stormwater, is the yellow 17%. This is what this webinar focuses on. So on average, that's 53,000 acre feet a year we recharge, we capture and recharge. And a big part of that is working with Prado Dam, with John's group. In last year, we were almost double, 94,000 acre feet in that piece. The big chunk here, 39%, that's that groundwater replenishment system. It just finished an expansion this last winter, so it is producing more than ever before. It's become a larger piece of the pie. And like I mentioned, some years we'll buy untreated import water and recharge it in the ground. And we have 1%, we have a partner project with LA. It's a seawater intrusion barrier on the county line over by Long Beach. So if you add up all those sources, it's about 333,000 acre feet a year, 109 billion gallons. So again, 83% of the total demand. So this is that same pie, just shown graphically different over the years. So you can see kind of the portions of the pie, how they've changed over the years. This is dating back to 1963. So the bottom bar, the yellow, is incidental, what nature is doing. If you kind of look at the last 10 years, you see generally the incidental is down. And so that may be a function of more development. It may be a function of more drought years. But you see that portion of the pie is generally less than it has been historically. Base flow, the brown, you see in the 60s, not that much. And then it really picked up in the 80s, 90s. The Inland Empire developed. In that time frame, they started producing wastewater year round. So that contributed to the base flow coming into Orange County. In the last 10 years, again, you see that piece being smaller and smaller. So they're getting smarter with their water in the Inland Empire and reusing it, not discharging as much to the river. The next color up, the orange, storm flow. So you see back in the 60s, early 70s, we weren't doing a lot of stormwater capture at Orange County Water District. It really took off in the 90s, all the way through today. And of course, it's opportunistic. You have to have storms in order to get storm capture. And then the blue here, imported water, you see that's always been a good chunk of our pie until recently. It's somewhat been offset by the purple bars, which is from the GBRS treatment plant, went into operation in 2008, expanded in 2015, and expanded again this past year. So this pink bar will be even larger when we come out with next year's numbers. So this storm flow piece, we run our own rain gauge here in Anaheim, and our data goes back to 1963. If you take an average of that, it's 13.9 inches of rain. I always like to point out there aren't too many years that are average. Yeah, there's a couple here or there. If you did by the sheer number, most years are under average. And then we have these generally peaky years, right, that mathematically bring the average up, but they're hard to deal with from operationally year to year. So this past year, we were essentially double the average after 2 very dry years. And then this yellow bar, that's just this year so far. Essentially, that's Hurricane Hillary is what's made the bar come up off of 0 so far. So a little bit about where we're getting our stormwater. So this is a watershed map for the Santa Ana River. So the Santa Ana River is the main river coming through Orange County. It has a choke point at Prado Dam right at the entrance to the county. And Prado, all the inflow upstream hits Prado first before coming into Orange County. So out of San Gabriel Mountains, San Bernardino, where Big Bear Lake is, and occasionally from San Jacinto Mountain. I put up this this red dotted line here. This portion on the east, it does technically flow to Prado, but all of this drains to Lake Elsinore first. So Lake Elsinore has to spill in order for us to get flow from that part of the watershed. It does occasionally happen. I believe we got a little bit of flow last year from Lake Elsinore. But today we're really focused on Prado Dam. I'm going to turn it over to John here in a minute and talk more specifics about Prado Dam, and then our recharge facilities that are here in Anaheim and Orange area. So just a quick introduction on Prado Dam. This is an aerial image. If you ever drive the 91 freeway from Orange County towards Corona, and you look out on the left, you see 1771 painted on some concrete. That's the spillway of the dam. The actual dam is the rock structure there to the side. So it was built or went into operation in 1941. Its primary function is flood control, but there was a portion of the storage reserved for water conservation, meaning holding stormwater for Orange County to use. So in this particular picture, this is from 2010. It shows a pool behind the Prado Dam. Of course, it's very sediment laden. We call it chocolate melt. And it's currently in this photo discharging 5,000 CFS. So here's a cartoon of the Prado Dam. The water conservation volume or elevation we're allowed is currently up to elevation 505. Over the decades, Orange County Water District has worked with the Army Corps and other parties to raise that elevation. We're currently at 505. The current spillway of the dam is 543 feet, and they're working on a project to raise that another 20 feet. But for water conservation, we're just shy of 20,000 acre feet in that 505. And so this is hugely important for us in Orange County, because if Prado Dam wasn't able to hold this stormwater for us, it would basically run through the river faster than we can capture it, faster than we can get it out of the river into the ground. And so even though this is 20,000 acre feet, if the storms are timed correctly, we might fill up to 20 and get a partial drainage or a whole drainage and then a refill. So in a given year, we might have a benefit of more than 20,000 acre feet. And so the goal is to capture it there, release it, capture it during the storm. So during the storm, there's still flow into the river. We in Orange, downstream in Orange County, collect what we can out of the river. And after the storm passes, then we slowly drain out the conservation pool to us at a rate that we make sure we capture it, that we get it all into our storage and percolate it into the ground. So with that, we'll pause my presentation and shift to John's.
Hello, everyone. Let's see. Are things looking the way they're supposed to look?
I see it. Thank you, John.
Okay. Now, hello, everyone. So I'm at the Corps, and we're operating Prado, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we contemplate when we're trying to go through our operational decision making. Let's see. This is what happened. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Oh, okay. What I see doesn't look right. So this is the Los Angeles district of the Army Corps of Engineers, and we cover a significant area. Today we're focusing primarily on this small section here, and I'll just point out that for the most part, storms that affect the Santa Ana River Basin also affect the Los Angeles River Basin. Prado responds a little more slowly than Los Angeles, so we're frequently very busy with the Los Angeles reservoirs sooner and more actively than the Prado, which usually takes a little while. Okay, how come you're not going forward? Just a little background. In the 70s, I believe it was, we did some analysis and determined that the original Prado Dam did not provide a 100-year level of protection to Orange County. And after a significant study, there was a 1988 general design memorandum that laid out a new plan to improve that level of protection. And it's a holistic system. It includes concrete improvements, quote unquote, for the entire Santa Ana River, essentially below Prado Dam, and a number of elements upstream, including Seven Oaks Dam and some other features. And we've already sort of talked about what the watershed looks like. This is just a general sense of the watershed. The Seven Oaks Dam captures some of the water coming out of the mountains, but it doesn't control a significant portion of the watershed overall. So the project is primarily authorized for flood control, and but we have this space that we sort of refer to as the conservation buffer pool, and we kind of use words like that because we're essentially borrowing space from the flood control pool. So when we deem that the incoming storm isn't a significant threat in a flood sense, it gives us the discretion to hold the water in cooperation with Orange County Water District and give it to them, let the pool drain out at a rate that Ben's folks can divert out of the channel and capture for groundwater recharge. But it's a balance. It's not actually a dedicated slice of the reservoir that's specific to water supply. We have a memorandum of agreement that lays out all the rules and who gets to do what, and it's still basically our space to operate. I'll just point out Corona Airport, which is The lowest part of Corona Airport is about 514. That'll come up again in a second. The other thing I wanted to just show was, as we talk about elevations, and a note for the engineers, almost all of the vertical elevations that we refer to are in the old NGVD 1929 vertical datum, because all of our plans were designed in that, and we haven't redone all of that. So when we refer to things like elevation 505, that's an elevation in the old vertical datum, so it won't match your GIS system, which is probably in the 88. It's about 2.5 foot difference. But what I wanted to show here simply was that we might add a foot or two, but each foot is a little different. As you go up in the reservoir, an additional foot is a big additional chunk of water. So Orange County Water District's job is to maximize their capture of water. So currently we're authorized to hold water up to 505. There's a request to go up to 508, which will probably be processed and ready to go this spring. That's only 3 feet. Sounds like it's not that much, but that extra 3 feet, I don't have the exact numbers, but my guess is it probably nearly doubles the amount of space that they have available, or we have available, to hold water for them. So this is looking out at the reservoir. These lands are the lands that are part of the reservoir. So it's lovely and it's open space, but it's not completely vacant. There are consequences to inundating things out here. You'll notice over here the Corona Airport, which comes up again. So this is essentially the inundation area behind the reservoir when we reached 529, which is about the same elevation as that aerial photo that Ben showed you earlier. And you'll notice that Corona Airport's underwater, Euclid Avenue is underwater. I can assure you that when Corona Airport goes underwater, we get to explain that to Congressman Calvert at length. So that's sort of an upper constraint that we are sensitive to. And the actual periphery of the reservoir is up to elevation 566. So that image earlier was only at 529, and in theory, the reservoir extends all the way up to 566. So the extent of the reservoir lands themselves are quite extensive, and there's a lot of stuff in here if we were to ever get a storm of that magnitude, including Orange County Water District, if I'm not mistaken, has a few offices up here near their wetlands, but they've never been wet, to my knowledge. So Prado's primarily flood control. That's our first concern. Has been alluded to in that large overall improvement of the Santa Ana River project. Raising the Prado spillway is the last piece, and that's pending. But we also know that water con is a very important aspect. I'll just say that the Corps is currently, the Corps traditionally has taken the position that water supply and water conservation are local responsibilities, partly I think because all the water laws vary across the states, and the federal government didn't necessarily want to get too far involved in that. But because the Corps possesses a lot of infrastructure that can assist in water supply, that I believe there is a conversation going on now with Congress about whether or not water supply / water conservation should become a primary mission for the Corps of Engineers, which it is not currently. We talk about holding water up to elevation 505. Well, why not hold water higher? Part of that has to do with, we have to negotiate with Fish and Wildlife Service. There has to be a biological opinion. The Prado is a major hatchery for least Bell's vireo, an endangered species. So the prospect of possibly flooding a nest or holding water so long that we modified or harmed the habitat is certainly a consideration that Fish and Wildlife Service gets involved with. And a lot of these decisions require a lot of, our operation in Prado requires a lot of coordination. There's a lot of moving parts. There's people inside the reservoir that we have to let know if they're going to get wet. There's folks downstream that we have to notify. So we don't make decisions on the fly for sure. We definitely need to have a plan and have some lead time. And there's always something going on. I just inserted here, this happens to be in the channel just downstream from Prado Dam, where the 71 freeway improvement has cut into the channel wall by 5 feet. So there's always some kind of construction, somebody doing something in the downstream area that we have to be cognizant of. And that's why we do, we generally, if we're going to start making any release of any size, we try to have at least 24-hour lead time so that we can make all the notifications and find out and notify anybody that might be impacted. And we can never anticipate what's going on. Under normal circumstances, our releases would be low enough that Ben's group would be diverting the entire flow out of the channel, and none of the water would flow further down in the concrete channel and reach the ocean. So when we make a flood control release, that's going to be a release that's larger than he can divert, and probably something larger than, say, 600-700 CFS. As soon as we exceed that, he's probably not able to catch all that, and it's going to continue down. So now there's folks downstream that we need to notify. A few years ago, we went through the notification process, and Orange County Public Works happened to be said, wait, we're dredging the mouth of the river. Our contractor has piled up all the spoils in the channel and has all his equipment in there. So I'm like, well, okay, we can hold off our release for a little while, but so there's always a need for coordination and lead time in planning. So what would we want things to look like normally? We have a forecast of some water coming in, and if we think that the amount of water coming into the reservoir is going to exceed elevation 505 and exceed the space that we are allowed to hold for WaterCon, we would be obligated to start making flood control releases when we exceeded 505. But we don't want to, sort of to my earlier point, we don't want to wait until the pool reaches 505 and then start making notifications. That might happen in the middle of the night. We want to be able to look ahead. We want to anticipate. We want to call people during the day. We generally don't want to start making flood control releases in the middle of the night. We want to make them in daylight. So, so we might have a forecast here. So this plot, the lavender on the bottom is a plot of the inflow to the reservoir, and the blue line is the plot of what we were releasing out of the reservoir. And so you can see that we started making a larger release out of the reservoir prior to the actual inflow coming, because we knew we had a forecast of a storm coming. And the green line in the top graph shows the water surface elevation. So we were at about 503, and we essentially made space, and we drew the pole down to 497. And then the storm came in and essentially refilled the pool. This is 2017. This is just a convenient example. So in a certain sense, this is kind of a clean operation. But I'll just say, if you look at where we ended up at 504 point something. And, Orange County would say, hey, you left 1,000 acre feet on the table. So, so we're always working at getting better at that. This is just an example of some of the forecast information we get. If you ever look up CW3E, you can see some really interesting forecast modeling data that we look at for what we think is coming in. This happens to be today's California, Nevada River Forecast Center inflow forecast for Prado Dam. So, in a probabilistic sense, it is theoretically possible that come Thursday, we could have an inflow peak nearly 10,000 CFS. The chances of that are extraordinarily small. We would generally be focused more on something in this yellow range. And in the yellow range, we're not going to exceed 1,000 CFS, maybe get to 2,000 CFS on Friday or Saturday when the watershed has gotten wetter. But the deterministic inflow forecast is this black line, and the black line is generally about 1,000 CFS coming in. So this is easy. There's not enough water coming in to exceed elevation 505. We don't need to make any flood control releases. We don't particularly need to make any major considerations for flood control coordination, release coordination. Obviously, we'll check and see what our water surface is, and if we're going to flood the golf course or somebody, we'll certainly be calling them. This is another hydrograph. This is Hurricane Hillary. This was also an unusual event for us because of the timing, but it wasn't terribly difficult in regard to our operation of Prado, because while the inflow peak was over 8,000 CFS, it wasn't a long duration, and so the volume wasn't going to exceed the space we had for water conservation. So we could basically we increased our releases up to, looks like, about maybe 500 CFS, which I think Orange County Water District could take all of that. So we never had to make another flood control release. So that was easy. If we look back at January 2023, this is a little bit more of a picture of the series of atmospheric rivers that we had this past year. And I think Ben would agree that in the scheme of things, it was as good a year as you could get, because we had a whole series of atmospheric rivers, but none of them was huge to the point of being any kind of massive flood threat. So, and they were spread out to some degree, so we were able to manage them fairly well. The top graph shows the black line shows the water surface elevation over the course of the month of January. And so you can see it's starting out almost empty, and in each successive inflow event, the pool jumps up a little bit. And we eventually, after January 15th, we eventually get over elevation 505, and we're in the flood control space. So if you look down at the brown line is the inflow to the Prado, and the green line is what we released. And you can see that we went into flood control release mode. We were making as much as 4,000 CFS releases for, I don't know what that is, maybe 4 days or something. So without trying to get too in the weeds, I'll just talk about some of what the thinking is in this one event. So we have an inflow forecast. And so if we plotted it up here, let's assume we're not going to make any flood control release. So this blue line down at the bottom is, we're just going to keep on making the same release we're making in coordination with Orange County Water District. The green dotted line is the inflow forecast. And if we proceed under this plan without making too many changes to our gate settings, the water surface elevation is going to rise, and it's going to get up to something over 511 into the flood control space. So we want to think ahead and say, okay, we're going to have to make a flood control release. When do we want to start making it? We need to make, we need some lead time. Right now, the River Forecast Center gives us pretty good forecasts with 5 days lead time. So if we're sitting on a pool of 20,000 acre feet of water for water conservation, and let's say we needed to make some space for the flood control coming in, we could start making release and make space. So here's our projection of what we're going to do. We're going to ramp up our releases, and we're going to get to something around 2,500 CFS release. Here's the same inflow hydrograph. And now the red line shows that the water surface elevation, while it goes up over 508, it's going to come back down relatively promptly. So that would be our new plan that we're going to operate on. So here's on the left is sort of what we anticipated happening. The pink, the dashed red line is what we were forecasting the water surface elevation was going to do. The solid red line is what it actually did. And why is that the case? That's because here's this dashed green line, which was what our original forecast was. And it turned out it was a cutoff low. And so the inflow actually was about half of what it was forecast to be. And so we were thinking we were going to have a bigger event than we did. We started making some flood control releases here in the blue, and we realized that the forecast was wrong. And we backed off and went back to making water conservation releases. And the pool got a little bit over 505, and we settled out right about there. So that's sort of the process by which we go through these events. Obviously, forecasts are not perfect, and we have to take that into consideration. The forecast-informed reservoir operations projects are improving the forecast greatly, but there's never going to be perfection. So this was the actual event. Inflow hydrograph was even smaller. Okay, I'm sorry. It's even smaller than we realized. The inflow hydrograph was really almost nothing compared to what we were expecting. So our outflow release, we had to ramp it back down pretty quickly. And we ended up just shy of 505. So at the end of the day, of course, Orange County would like us to be sitting with a pool at 505 to capture all that water. And again, we lost out on a little bit of that water, but that's just based on the forecast issues. I'll just point out that we have a website that you can look at things in real time. You can watch you can look at a picture up here. This is the home page, and this circle here is a pull down menu for basins, and you would just select the Santa Ana River, and you can see real-time rainfall, real-time stream flow, and here you could download data on what's happening at Prado Reservoir. The website address is in the bottom, and I'll stop now.
Thanks, John. Let's see. There we go. So, yeah, poor John and his team have to listen to us. We're like a fly. They have to keep swatting away. They say, hey, there was 200 acre feet more you could have captured there at 11:30 at night after you haven't slept for 3 days. And they do a great job with us. They're patient with us and really try to optimize what we can capture. And so I think it's been a great teamwork with them. I did want to go look. So Prado is up off the top right of this figure. So now we're down in the Anaheim Orange area, the Santa Ana River down through the middle of the screen. So these are the recharge facilities Orange County Water District manages. So it's 1,600 acres of land. Just under 1,100 of that can be wet, meaning where the water touches. So you might say, well, why is there 500 acres you own that's dry? Well, that's maintenance roads. It's the sides of the lakes, because most of our system's gravity driven. So there are sides of the lakes that we can't fill them all the way for conveyance. And there's like maintenance yards and stuff. So depending how you count them, there's over 24 distinct, we call them basins, they're lakes. 4 of those are joint facilities with the Orange County Flood Control District. That means Orange County Flood Control actually owns them, and we have an agreement with them. They let us use them when it's not storming, or to a limited amount when it's not storm in the forecast. If you add up the storage of all those facilities, it's 25,000 acre feet. We have 4 rubber dams, 2 in the river. Those are the main ones that are going to divert water out of the river into our basins, our lakes. All these facilities, on average, we're percolating 220,000 acre feet a year. And then last year we were up to 260,000, an additional 40,000, directly attributable to the rainfall. One of the challenges we did face, extra challenges we faced last year, you saw this pop up on the right. Irvine Lake is the first destination for water coming out of the Santa Ana Mountains. And then this blue body here, this is the inundation pool for Villa Park Dam. And downstream of there is our largest facility by volume and by percolation. We call Santiago Basin. This is in the intersection of Villa Park, Orange area, a little bit of county space there. So our normal routine is to take water from Prado and to pump it over from the river to Santiago. Well, this past year, Irvine Lake filled, and they started discharging. In turn, Villa Park Dam started discharging. So they filled up these basins for us. And so we were, we had to adjust our strategy, where we're normally sending 100 to 200 CFS, cubic feet per second, from the river over there. We didn't have that as an option anymore. So that's an example of year to year how things change. So I have a series of graphs here. I'm going to try to walk through this. My boss's boss might fire me for showing these, but I think that's the best way to show the story. So this last water year, we work on a water year July to June. So that's how my line's broken up. So the 22-23 line is here in the center. That's the rainfall. You see the year before, rainfall was like just shy of 6 inches. This last year, almost 27. I remember right before Christmas sitting in a webinar from NOAA, the Weather Service, and them saying it's going to be the same winter as last year. It's going to be super dry, boring. And then, of course, on Christmas Day, the forecast started coming out, lining up several atmospheric rivers, meaning, large precipitation events. And so what it turned into was 13 atmospheric rivers hit Southern California over the last winter. The average would be 6. And that doesn't mean it rains super heavy in Orange County. That's anywhere in Southern California. So we were coming off a prediction of dry into, a super wet year, as you're all well aware. Irvine Lake was discharging to our Santiago Basin for basically all of February and March, right when we had some more big rainfall. So we didn't have, we were still getting water. That's a good story. We just didn't have our normal procedure for how we like to move the water around. And then the current water year is over here on the right. Just wanted to point out Tropical Storm Hillary that landed in August. I'll talk some more about that in a few slides. So this was the CW3 website John referred to. This is one of their graphics. This might be a little much, but Orange County, Anaheim's right here at the 34 north mark. So I put a box around it. And then as you move to the left here, these are the dates. So this chart was generated on January 4th. And what it's showing are the atmospheric rivers. It shows 5 in a series here. We're going to hit SoCal, and sure enough, they did. The color changes due to probability. So, you know, the closer it is, the more sure they are it's going to be hitting here. And that matches what John was talking about earlier. So this is some of the same information John showed. He showed some individual events, and now I'm going to show the whole season. So if I put on this same chart, the Prado Conservation Pool, this is that elevation 505, just shy of 20,000 acre feet. So basically it's the elevation at Prado. So we got a nice storm in November. We're able to drain that down to our facility. Another small storm in December, and then January 1st hit atmospheric river 1, 2, 3, 4. This in there somewhere also really tight. And so this was, I believe, what John was showing when they had to do the high release in January. What we call high release, meaning more than we can capture. We had a nice period to drain Prado out. Got about a little more than halfway, and then March started raining again, and the Corps did a great job riding the line there, landing us right at the end at elevation 505. And then you can see Tropical Storm Hillary here, just like John showed earlier. The last line I'm going to put on here is our storage capacity in the Anaheim and Orange facilities. So we are constantly percolating, but we do have storage. So here's how our storage reacts to the Prado and the other things. So you see, coming into last year's rainy season, we were down quite a bit on our storage, meaning we have between the dark blue and the dash line that much available space. So you see our storage pick up when we drain Prado. We also happen to take an imported met delivery in this time frame also, because we were expecting a dry winter. That got cut off pretty quick in December. And then you see our facilities basically full until we get Prado empty. Once Prado's empty, then we can start percolating our facilities and start cleaning them, because they get clogged with silt and clay sediment. And then you see unexpectedly, seasonally unexpectedly, Hurricane Hillary come in August. So we were supposed to be dry and cleaning and doing maintenance on our pumps. Well, all of a sudden we have this gift of water. So we have to adjust our strategy again and refill facilities we were planning to be empty and cleaning. So I just like to share what happened, what my viewpoint was that week of Hurricane Hillary. This is basically a summary of the forecasting from the National Weather Service that week. On Monday, they were saying nothing. There were rumors about this hurricane down in Mexico. Tuesday, they said they don't know how close it's coming to SoCal. There's potential for rain this weekend. By the way, the rain landed on Sunday. Wednesday, they say, yeah, there's more moisture, maybe a remnant hits Southern California. Thursday afternoon, I would say they stepped up the warnings a bit. It's uncertain, but it could be high impact. Flood watch is in effect. It's going to be very windy. I remember them focusing on the wind at this point. On Friday, they came out with a saying, you know, it is going to hit SoCal. It's going to be a big deal. The Army Corps, John's folks, issued, again, it's Friday, and like John mentioned, they don't want to notify everybody on Saturday when they're not working. So they did a notification on Friday saying, hey, we might have to do a high release. And the tropical storm watch first issuance known was issued for Southern California. Saturday was basically a repeat of the Friday forecast. And of course, Hillary hit on Sunday. And in Orange County, in our Prado watershed, it was about half of what it was predicted. But as we know, it was a different story inland in the Coachella Valley. So just very briefly, this is average rainfall in August. So I crudely outlined the Prado drainage area. And again, here's that dashed line that we don't get a lot of flow to Prado out of the eastern portion. Prado's this red trapezoid here. So what are these colors represent? So average in August, you know, 0.1 inches in Riverside, 0.8 above Rancho Cucamonga, 0.7 up by Big Bear. And what did Hillary do? You know, the colors are brighter. So it dropped 2 inches, 10 inches up and above Rancho Cucamonga, 3.4 at Big Bear, 2.6 in Anaheim. So, you know, can't say it enough. It developed quickly. It dropped a lot of water in a time of the year we don't normally expect it. So I do want to point out what Prado Dam enabled was storm capture from that single event of 10,500 acre feet. We also picked up another 350 acre feet we call local, so inflow to the river below Prado Dam. So one way to look at this is if Prado Dam was not able to do stormwater capture for us, we would have only gotten 3% of the amount of water we got out of that event. They enabled that extra 97% capture. So overall lessons learned for OCWD over the last year. Seasonal forecasts may not be accurate. Like I mentioned in last December, they were saying it's going to be dry. 2 weeks later, it started raining very intensely for the whole month. There's historically some correlation between rainfall in Southern California and El Nino. We just got an update this morning from NOAA, the Weather Service. They confirmed what I wrote here. Within the last decade, the correlation is not occurring. Last year was a La Nina year. We got double the average. And so there's not necessarily a strong correlation to rainfall between El Nino and La Nina, at least in recent history. So another lesson we learned, keep learning, always be ready. Hillary developed very quickly. It takes months to get a basin ready to clean. We were in that process, and Hillary came within a week. We had to react. We had to change our plans. It also goes to show we have to constantly be maximizing our percolation. We have to get that water in the ground so that we have storage available for whatever comes and how quickly it comes. Today's decisions are based on today's information. And you know, hindsight may be 20/20, but in the moment, you only have a forecast that may or may not be reliable, and that forecast giving you a few days. Well, in stormwater capture and recharge, our decisions take months sometimes to have an effect. So it's important to remember what we choose today, you know, obviously has an immediate impact, but also a very long-term one. And that Prado Dam is essential to our stormwater program. Like I point out for Hillary, 97% of the capture was enabled by Hillary. Typically, more than half of the stormwater capture we get is because of the partnership with the Prado Dam. John talked about the elevation increase to 505, so that's a one-time shot of 5,700 acre feet. But again, if we can partially drain and refill that, you could get that multiple times a year, depending on the rainfall. And we also are working with the Army Corps on what's called FIRO, Forecast Informed Reservoir Operation. We're attempting the FIRO concept, very briefly, is to allow the operators, the people operating the dam, to look at the forecast and make decisions with more information as forecasts improve, versus only being able to make decisions off what water level is in the reservoir. So with that, oh, this is a bald eagle that visits us every day at field headquarters. That's why we share the. With that, John and I are available for any questions.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Ben and John. And if you both want to jump back on camera, I know we're almost at the top of the hour, but we do have some time left for Q&A, and our speakers are willing to stay on for a couple minutes after to answer some questions. So I do encourage you to jot your questions down in the Q&A box if you have any today. Or if you think of something after the hour's up, please email Orange County Water District at info@ocwd.com, and we could always circle back with you after as well. But I did want to get started with a couple questions. Ben, you talked a lot about those were great perspectives and points about lessons learned, and a great recap on what we experienced last year in terms of rainfall and groundwater recharge. Can you talk a little bit about what Orange County Water District is doing today to prepare for what might be coming ahead?
Sure. Yeah, so this morning, John and I participated in a meeting with Orange County Public Works and some other entities. So every year we do a seasonal preparation meeting. So we all have our different pieces of the puzzle. Like John mentioned, there'll be construction going on there, or somebody's having erosion somewhere else. So we try to do that coordination. It continues through the storm season also. Right now we are attempting to wrap up cleaning our basins. This year's been tough. So by cleaning the basin, I mean getting the water out, removing the clay and silt that's on the floor, clogging percolation. We had water late in the year. We had Hillary in August. So one of our large facilities, for example, we're right on the verge of being able to clean it again. And of course it's going to rain this week. So it has been a struggle this year in terms of cleaning. We've been able to clean most of our facilities, though. We're ready. We have over 10,000 acre feet of storage available in the Anaheim Orange facilities right now. We were able to do maintenance on our pump station. So when there's a storm event, we're in daily communication with John's team about how to release and hold the flows out of auto. So those are some of the ways we're preparing for this winter.
And John, I believe this question is for you. What data are used to track and assess storms to make decisions for Prado Dam operations? You talked a little bit about how you operate Prado Dam. Are there specific maybe software or programs that you use or data that you track?
So the California Nevada River Forecast Center provides us with inflow hydrographs, inflow forecasts for Prado specifically, among other locations throughout our service area. And as we've sort of alluded to, CW3E's website has some very good forecast information and tools. We have what is nominally referred to as SWIMS, the Core Water Management System, where we can basically put in the forecast rainfall out in the watershed, and it'll simulate what we think the inflow will be. And we have basic tools that simpler tools that we use as well to and so today, right now, there was a briefing from the National Weather Service on the upcoming storm this week. So we participate in all kind of information input from the experts on what we think is coming.
Thank you, John. Ben, what is done with the sediments that accumulate in the retention dams? And can that material be trucked anywhere, specifically to local beaches or?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, when we get the stormwater and the base flow, that sediments travel with that water. So what we end up removing from the lakes is very heavily clay and silt. We try to leave the sand in the basin because that's not clogging the water. It can move through that. So we end up, with heavy equipment with removing these piles of clays and silts, a little bit of sand mixed in. Occasionally we'll get a contractor interested in that material. We'll give it to them for free. We've got 90 people on the webinar. If anyone's interested, we have clay and silt material for you. Generally, it's not a great building material, so we generally accumulate it. Sometimes we'll have to take it to a landfill, but hopefully we find the contractors that will take it. Sometimes some of our facilities, we do get a mixture with more sand in it, and the contractors are very interested in that. They do want to build like that when there's a sand mixture in it.
Thank you. And I do have a question about, were there any other flood control releases last spring because of the frequent late storms? Is there anything that either Orange County Water District or Prado could have done differently to maybe capture some of those late season storms? Or any other lessons learned that you could speak to, Ben or John?
Sure. Maybe I'll start, John. So there, what I call a high release, meaning more than I can capture from Prado Dam. There was the one in January, end of January, end of February, and basically the whole month of March. We were at the water conservation level in Prado. We were maxed out our storage here in Anaheim, Orange. So with what we have, I would say we maxed everything out for the year. Very comfortable with that. So one might say, well, what about building more facilities, right? More diversion capacity, more lakes, more storage. And that is an option. It's a challenge because in dry years, those wouldn't be used. Versus in a wet year that happens, every 3 or 5 or 6 years, maybe it would. So it does become a balance between land use and, the residents of the city don't love a dry pit, in their neighborhood that's not getting used all the time. So it is a balance between capturing those peaky events versus, the economics and the neighborhood impacts of having more facilities.
Now, I'll close on this final question. Oh, John, did you have a comment?
No.
I'll close on this final question. Are there any efforts to implement any landscape or vegetative strategies to increase percolation throughout the year, specifically in surrounding upstream areas, so that the amount of flood control can be minimized?
Not specifically. It is, I understand that there is often a perception and a desire to have planting over the land so that perhaps it can slow down some of the flow, the surface flow, and reduce the amount of inflow into a flood control facility. Generally speaking, the events that we're dealing with would far exceed the percolation capacity of the soil, regardless of what is on there. I mean, that's not to say that vegetation isn't a great thing, but it doesn't generally solve the flood control problem writ large.
All righty. Thank you, John. And thank you, Ben. I do want to just end on this comment here from a customer. He says he doesn't have a question, But we'll say it's a heck of an operation you guys are running over there. A 4 a.m. hats off to you both, to both you gents from Perth, Australia. Thank you for the presentation. So when I said good afternoon, I did not have a Kesmare in mind on the 4 a.m. time frame there. But I want to close on that and just thank Ben and John one more time for your great presentations today. Thank you for spending the time with us. And thank you to all our attendees for tuning in at wherever you're tuning in from. We really appreciate it. And the slides will be available and the recording will be available on OCWD's website and YouTube channel. And if you do have any questions that we didn't get to, we will follow up with you after. Or again, if you think of a question that you want to email us about, please do email us at info@ocwd.com and we will get back to you. Thank you very much. And thanks, Ben John, again. Really appreciate it. Have a good day, everyone.